Hey guys, Mr. Thibodeau here. So I want to talk to you today about biremes and triremes. Okay, these were the quintessential ship of ancient armies. From the Egyptians, Phoenicians, the Persians used a version. The Romans absolutely used a bunch of these. Greeks, of course, are most well known for them. These will survive and be used in one form or another all the way up to the Byzantines, where they will take this and they will change it into what's called a dromon. But in any case, this ship, this design, is classic. Now, we know of this mostly from actually pictures on vases or vases. Paintings of it survived for a long time. Descriptions of it from Herodotus and Thucydides. I think Thucydides mostly. It wasn't until I think early this century that we found an intact version of one of these that had sunk, and the wood had been preserved because it was in a really salty area. We've then since remade one of them ourselves. Okay, we made a modern version of it, which is pretty cool as well. So the bireme, bi means two sets of oars. A trireme is three sets of oars, and they've actually gone all the way up to I think five when the height of the Roman Empire, when they're making the biggest, baddest ships. So the trireme, okay, would have a deck for you to stand on and have some archers, just a few. Generally, though, you didn't win a ship combat by firing arrows at one another. You won a ship combat by using this guy right here, the brass ram, to just smash into another boat, hitting them in the side. And the way that works, of course, is you have to be going pretty fast, which means these oars have to be really, really working in concert. Now, the trireme is pretty cool because, so I hope you can just see this picture. The trireme is pretty cool because in order to, this is just copy and pasted, in order to get it to go, okay, you have to have a bunch of oarsmen. Now, I said it was 3 rows for a trireme, but that doesn't look like 3 rows right there, does it? Now, what happens is the rows are really, really clever, okay? They don't have space in order to get 3 completely different levels. What they did instead is have people kind of on top of one another with 3 different angles to get their oars into the water. That allowed a really high, what they call it, oar gear ratio. So basically like gears in a car. Now, there were some versions of this depending on who was making the boat, okay? So here is one of the thoughts, is that these guys would be standing, and then these guys would be sitting. So sitting, you can use a lot more of your legs in that you're pushing back against something. Standing, you're kind of changing your whole sense of body. They use different muscles, but they're quite interesting how people were thinking about it and trying to do it. Now, they used to think that these boats were made up of slaves, that rowing would be you would put your lowest captives as a rower. However, that's really not the case. When we look into the historical record, these were well-paid soldiers, well-paid sailors. Rowing is difficult work, and it is skilled. In order to do it in time, you have to know exactly what you're doing. And they also really, Athens in particular, really did not want a slave revolt. You have to be very, very careful when you are giving slaves weapons or telling slaves that, hey, you're in charge of our army and our safety, go out and kill those guys. They're going to be like, why though? You've got me enslaved. I don't know if I want to do that, right? Nobody, if you're a slave, you're going to do anything you can to not help the guy who enslaved you. By the way, slavery at this point is not a black-white thing. It is entirely different. Greeks are enslaving other Greeks, enslaving basically anyone from a different city-state than them. Okay, city-states was the important thing. They didn't care about the color of your skin to any real extent. They were all brownish, honestly, in the Mediterranean, but brownish to dark brown. But they did care about where you're from. Can they conquer you? You know, if you're conquered, all right, you're a slave. Eventually, they earned their freedom to some extent, or often would. Doesn't mean slavery was good. You don't want to be a slave. If you can be a skilled slave, that's good. In any case, so the rowers were not generally slaves. They were stacked on top of each other in kind of interesting ways. Oh, here's a modern depiction of it. Okay, 1, 2, 3 rows, all right there, real close quarters. Okay, and this is from the modern recreation. Something else that's really cool is they would use dowels, okay, and wood construction here. The cool thing about this, so biremes and triremes could float for sure, but they would eventually get waterlogged, much like the boats we're making with our wood. They are not treated with a lot of, you can't just leave it in the ocean, okay? Eventually it will soak up enough water and it will sink on its own, okay? So you have to haul these things up at night, okay? You have to make sure that they stay out of the ocean during the night so that way they don't get waterlogged, which made them extremely vulnerable to attacks. If all of your enemy's boats are just sitting on land somewhere, that's a great time to try and attack if you can. But they also didn't use nails very often, right? What they'd use instead is these dowels and these called tenons, and then they'd have their planks with these holes in them. And what this allowed you to do is you would pound this dowel in. This dowel would be very close to the same diameter as your hole. So you got to pound it in with a wooden mallet. Okay, you get it in there, it sort of fits. As soon as it gets in the water, it's going to start to add, it's going to absorb some of that water, which is fine because that makes it tighter. Okay, and that then makes the seal stronger. So it's pretty interesting how they built it, and you'd finish it. These things would last a well-maintained trireme. Our sources tell us would last about 20 years. Okay, you have to replace a number of parts throughout, but well-maintained triremes could last about 20 years. They could also travel about 9 knots, which is pretty fast for a boat. Let's see what the somebody said even up to 12 knots, but how fast is a knot? So 1 knot is just a little over 1 mile an hour. Okay, so going 12 miles an hour doesn't seem all that fast, but on water, on a boat where you're rowing, that's quite fast. And when you have the same amount of momentum as this boat is going to have, right? This is a very, very heavy boat. And for all of that momentum going 12 miles an hour, it's going to pack a heck of a punch when it hits you. So especially, you know, if you can get a good side hit. So they're not, it's not like it's going 30, 40 miles an hour, but it is going fast enough to be able to really use that ram to great effect. And that ram, of course, is really low to the water, specifically so that when it hits, it's going to create a big old hole right where the water line is on your enemy ship. A few important things to know here is the Greek trireme was made, of course, famous by Athens as they won many naval combats with them. They had the oracle at Delphi told the Athenians that they would win the day. They should trust their defenses of Athens in wooden walls. And a lot of people are like, okay, we'll just build wood wall around the city, I guess. But then they were like, no. It's a metaphor. So it's not literal. It's not actual wooden walls. The wooden walls are our boats, our ships. And so we will have a strong Athenian fleet, and that will protect us. And that did protect them. All right, well, that's what I got for you guys today. Just almost 10 minutes. So try to make a summary of what I've said. You may have to watch it a few times. what is the most important things that you think that I said about the trireme? Okay. What is the most important? Okay. Find 3 important things that I said. Okay. And then try to make a summary. So if you're telling your parents about the video you just saw, what would you tell them? Okay. All right. Have a good one, guys. Bye.